Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Flawed Theology podcast. I'm Phil.
And I'm Susie, and we're asking the question, if your theology were wrong, wouldn't you want to know?
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Flawed Theology podcast. We're excited today because we've got another... I don't know how we do this, I guess, for like, I have some kind of like gift that we nab like guests that are way above our pay grade. So yeah. We're really excited today to have Robert with us from Affinis Humanity. Robert, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I know Robert from, I think the first time I heard you on Graceful Atheist was the first time I heard you, that podcast.
And Phil and I don't know if you remember, but we texted afterwards. We were like, did you hear this guy?
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to follow his TikTok.
Yeah. So that's how we heard you. And I was like blown away. I was like, oh yeah, man,
me too.
This guy's friggin' awesome. Like that was probably a year
I think it was like a year ago
that you were on there.
Yeah, about a year ago. And yeah, David is great. David is a good guy.
Yeah, it's a great podcast. We love the stories that he has on there, and then we sometimes like he gets a guest, and then we're like, "Ooh, I need that guy. I want to talk back to that person too."
Hey, that's what you got to do. That's what you got to do. You know.
So we'll try not to replicate that conversation. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your faith background, and then we'll get into your organization and what you've got going on out there in Arizona. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, my name is Robert Peoples. I'm from Affinis Humanity Coalition, originally from New Jersey, residing here in Arizona now. I have a BA in industrial psychology. As far as my childhood rearing and kind of what, catapulted me to a more humanistic, atheistic bent. Well, I'll tell you this, I grew up as Baptist and I loved it. Right. I don't have like horror stories like a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Right. I played baseball, played Little League. I played baseball all through college. I was a pitcher. So a lot of the baseball teams were interconnected with the churches out there in New Jersey. Okay. So I loved it. I'm glad my mother was kind of open because I was always very inquisitive. And I had a cousin who was like the first genius that I ever met. Literally like his teachers were like, you need to apply to be for the Mensa Society, and it was kind of really cool. He was like so smart. And he says, Rob, you got a lot of questions, man. I want to give you a book. I know you're young. I was 13 at the time. And the book he gave me was The Age of Reason by Thomas Paine at 13 years old.
Hello. Some nice light reading.
Yeah.
Real light.
That's some hard stuff. That's hard.
Yes. And I got through it. And from there, my mom was open, even though she was a Christian. I said, hey, Mom, I want to explore different other religions, right? I want to learn about Islam. Well, my mother used to work with some Muslim doctors, and she said, well, there's a mosque in Princeton, New Jersey. Do you want to go with them? Sure. Did prayer, salat in Arabic and the whole nine for 2 years. After that, I said, I really dig Buddhism. I want to really learn about Buddhism. Then went to a Buddhist temple for about a year. By the time I was about 19, I said, I got it. I kind of understand the whole Christian thing. I understand the Islamic thing. I understand that I really dig Buddhism, by the way. I mean, it's atheistic in nature anyway, right? Mm-hmm. And I really dig Buddhism. But I said, I'm good. My atheism and humanism is secure. And I was glad that I was exposed because, I'm not someone who just grew up in a secular household and I don't know anything about, religion or why people believe in what they do or the emotional connections that they have. I've been through it, my entire family. I grew up in it. I'm kind of glad that my mother was open enough to allow me to express myself, to be inquisitive. I appreciated that. And it really put me on the trajectory that I am now. But if it wasn't for that book, if it wasn't for that book.
How did your mom take it after all this? She gave you the freedom to question and learn about other religions. And then you come back and you're like, well, I don't believe any of it. How did she take that?
Oh, it backfired.
Yeah.
She was angry. She was very angry. She would say, you grew up in the church. You know God, Robert. How can you do this? You're going to turn your back on the Lord, And I said, well, Mom, you taught me to be a thinker. And I'm just on a different path than you right now. Mm-hmm. The rest of the family really didn't care too much, but really my mother did. But over the years, she got over it.
Was your genius cousin an atheist?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
Before you got the Age of Reason and all that, were you like fully invested in Christianity? Like, did you pray the magic prayer when you were 4 years old? And like, you would say you were in at that point, or were you kind of just like going along for the ride?
I think it was the latter. Thinking back, I wasn't totally sold, even though I went to Sunday school and I got kicked out of Sunday school like 2 times because I would ask a lot of questions. What really got me maybe about the age of 10 was the whole story of Abraham and Isaac, right? And I'm like, wait a minute, this father is about to slit his son's throat because his God wants to prove that Abraham has loyalty to him. Like, what?
Right.
What kind of narcissistic monster is this? And that just kind of, that just shook me a little bit. And then my mother would say, I wish that I could have a faith like Abraham. I yearn to have a faith. And I've heard other people in the church like, I yearn to have that faith. I want my faith to be so strong that I'll be willing to commit an abominable act. And I'm like, oh man, I think all the children should get together and call Child Protective Services.
Yes,
right.
Yeah,
yeah. It sounds real noble until you're the one that they're trying to carry up the mountain to put on the altar. Like then you're like, hey, Ma, let's chill with the faith. Like,
right. You know what I mean? And so that kind of had me straddling the fence since that age. And then from there, we're just kind of. I questioned a lot of things. And so I was kind of in it for the ride because I had to go, right? I had to go to church. I was even baptized. I was like, okay. Yeah, I wasn't totally sold out to it. Not at all.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So then you decide to go to college from there. And I'm assuming you went to a secular college?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then did you start out with IO psychology? Because that's an interesting thing to land in because most people don't even know what that is. Like,
because like my mom was always pushing me. She wanted me to go corporate, right? She wanted me to be this this corporate guy, and I thought it was cool. I've always liked to talk to people. If businesses are kind of struggling and their finances are not in order, or they're trying to figure out why aren't we able to, keep employees? Why we have this high turnover rate? Then an industrial psychologist will come in and say, okay, I'll give you an assessment, tell you what you need to do. And I just thought that was kind of cool. It was a different branch of psychology that I didn't even know of, and so I was just kind of trying to follow my mother's expectations.
Okay.
It's funny how you did that for her aspirations for your job, but not for your religion.
No, because that's really, you can always change a job. You can always switch careers.
Right.
But religion, that's a driving force.
More dogmatic.
Oh man. And most people, unfortunately, will never be able to shake the residuals of their indoctrination. They'll always have a struggle with it.
Right.
Now, I was very adamant about being the opposite of what my mom expected me to be religiously wise. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you consider yourself lucky that you got out at 13?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a friend now who actually graduated from Princeton Theological Seminary, and he came out as an atheist.
Wow.
But this is what he told me. Now, this has been maybe 4 years now. And so this is what he told me about a couple months ago. He said, Rob, I know that hell isn't real. I know it's not. Intellectually, cognitively, I know it's not real. But do you know that there are some things that trigger me where I literally have a biological response? I get hives. I start to have anxiety. And that reminds me of the book, The Body Keeps Count, where we think that we forgot about the trauma, but the body stores it. And the body says, I'm going to let you know from time to time, we're still here.
Yeah.
And so, I am so fortunate that I got out of it, or started my deconstructing journey when I was 13, because I couldn't imagine me, I'm in my late 40s now. I couldn't imagine me doing it right now and worrying about being ostracized from family and friends and going through that whole rigmarole, right? I couldn't imagine that, not at this point in my life. So I'm very happy that I got out of it very early.
I think no matter when it happens, there's definitely certain responses that you don't know that they're going to pop up until they do. And that's really true about a lot of that stuff being a trauma response. Like we see that a lot in a lot of the Facebook groups that we're in, you see people saying, I thought I was good with where I am in my deconstruction, and then this happened, and then now I'm on the floor, and I'm like
sobbing in the fetal position.
And that's exactly right. That idea of the body keeping the score is like,
yeah,
that's a real thing, and that's something that just is not taught in the church at all. Like, there's no acknowledgement of trauma, even in the traditional sense. You don't, if a kid is like sexually abused or something, the church, says, oh, well, you're just supposed to forgive and move on from that. There's no acknowledgement of the process that you need to actually heal from that emotionally and physically and all of that.
Absolutely. I mean, and the church doesn't even, they don't really even convey, the possibility that a lot of people who, and especially men who incur physical abuse as a child, there's a large percent that they actually become predators because of that abuse. Right. Church doesn't even recognize that.
No, they don't see that connection at all. So then you were doing something else before you started Affinis, right? How did you come to start Affinis Humanity?
I was selling clothing, right? I was really heavy into fashion, and, I wanted to create like a fashion line that promoted free thinking. And so there's this kind of organization, it's called Raw. And it's for like a plethora of artists, whether it's fashion or what have you, modeling, singing, composing. And I came in third out of about like 90 artists. And I was like, wow, this is a void that needs to be filled. And then from there, I met amazing people in LA. And after that, I just wanted something more. I was like, okay, the fashion is cool, but I really wanted to get into schools. I really want, especially high schools. That's what kind of sparked my interest in starting my nonprofit. And since then, I've gone into like many high schools, and I literally teach a humanistic approach to life. And you can imagine being in Arizona, although sure, the main political positions are now blue, it's still very much a red state, very much so, very still conservative. Me getting into high schools, I not yet have ever received any fallout from my humanistic approach. And because that's where it's at, it's the kids. And I mean, psychologists say, by the time you're about 16, 17 years old, you're kind of almost like the person that you're going to be as an adult. Sure, you might get some more responsibilities and stuff, but, by the time you get to college and you start being exposed to philosophy and all that stuff, it's almost too late. You really have to teach kids like how to think and not what to think.
Right.
And so that's where the whole philosophy and humanism came in. And that's why I started my nonprofit.
So you're not going into schools and teaching them like, oh, God's not real and blah, blah, blah. Like you're teaching them like, here's how you think. Here's how you know things. Do you teach them about epistemology?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I get into all of that.
Yeah, that's so important.
Oh, yeah. Teleology, ontology. Oh, I get into, because they need to know this. In other European countries, children are exposed to philosophy like in the 6th, 5th grade.
And they're less religious than the United States. Is that a coincidence?
Exactly, right. It's not a mandated part of curriculum. Even in college. You don't have to take philosophy. No. Right? You know what I mean? And so it's very important, and I think that's why in America, it's not mandated, because you can't have a nation of children that can think for themselves. That's the detriment to the machine.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about like what Affinis does. Kind of explain what it is that you actually do and like what your goals are. And
Oh, absolutely. And so one of the things, the major thing with Affinis is DEI, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. And DEI trainings, around the country, it's always, the usual suspects, right? It's always race, it's always gender and sexual orientation. But one thing that is not spoken of is religious diversity, or the lack thereof. And what I found out was that in the court systems, one of the major things of litigation in courts in this country is about religious issues in the workplace. And people don't feel either heard, people feel that their beliefs or lack thereof, they're being discriminated against, especially atheists in the workplace. What I do is now I go into corporations and I teach DEI from a philosophical aspect, from a religious aspect, instead of and combining them, right? Because, hey, the more religious you are, the greater the propensity for racism. The greater, the more religious you are, the greater the propensity for homophobia, for xenophobia, for all of it, for misogyny, for sexism. There's a study called, and it's free, it's a PDF, it's called Why Don't We Practice What We Preach? It's a meta-analytic study over 40 years. One of the professors is from ASU, Wendy Woods, and they concluded that, yes, the greater the religiosity, the more homophobic, the more racist, the more sexist, the more misogynistic that people become. And I just thought that it should be a very important component of DEI training. And so that is the main core of Affinis Humanity.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Phil. That was the study I told you earlier I wanted to ask him about. Yeah. I remember you had mentioned that study a while back, and I tried my hardest to find it and I couldn't find it. So I'm happy that you brought it up. I wanted to ask you about it.
Oh, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, please. So I had an experience a while back where my nephew was dedicated at a Seventh-day Adventist church, and part of the service was the pastor getting up in front of everybody, him knowing that my family was atheist, and saying that, how do we know that Christianity is true? Because of the better moral fruits. And I'm sitting here like, but are they? Or do they have better moral fruits? And that's not true. It's not true at all. So could you talk a little bit about how being religious or religiosity leads to kind of worse moral fruits? And of course, not for every single individual, but overall.
Oh, yeah. There's a study out of Berkeley that basically states that children that are reared in secular households actually exude higher levels of empathy than religious kids do. My take on that is, we're taught in religion that if you do something, if you wrong someone, you can just go into your closet, pray to God, and all is forgiven. But in a secular perspective, I can't afford to do that. I have to rectify the wrong with you. I have to make amends, right? And so that leads to a greater responsibility and accountability, because I don't have to just say I'm sorry to my sky daddy, and I don't have to apologize for you because my God already forgave me. So why should I come to you and ask for forgiveness? No, there's no scientific evidence whatsoever that states that, the more religious you are, the greater the morality. I mean, let's look at the Inquisitions, look at, the Crusades. It's just not true. And I question sometimes if a person thinks religion makes them moral, I'm kind of almost on the fence of what, keep believing. Keep believing in it, because if this is the only thing that's stopping you from killing me, right, keep it. Keep the delusion, keep it, right? Yeah. But now I think it's clinical at that point.
You start to view that person differently, because you're like, really the only motivation you have for being a decent human being is your belief system. Most of the world doesn't operate that way. You're an outlier. But then, to go back to the Affinis mission thing, it's not an outlier in the US, because the assumption is that every person you come across is religious in some form or fashion. So then when they hear that you're an atheist or a humanist, or, if you just aren't religious at all, there's this wonderment, really? You don't believe in God? And then it always,
you don't believe in anything?
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, you don't believe in anything, and it degenerates. Well, how do we all get here? And just a lot of stupid questions.
I don't believe in germs.
Yeah. And then when you look at the basis of morality, we just did an episode about morality, which we talked about this at length. The idea that morality comes from religion, like you said, there's no historical basis for that. Morality was here first amongst communities, and then religion grew out of that when they codified their moral precepts and tried to levy them on the community. Like,
absolutely. There's a magazine, Nature. It's kind of like the premier kind of like scientific litmus, right? And basically in there it was stating, this was kind of like a few years ago, that civilizations occur moral first. Here's what gets interesting. When a civilization reaches about 1 million people, somehow religion creeps in. Isn't that interesting? Civilizations possess morality before religion comes in.
Yeah.
Right. So it kind of leads us to think, oh, you know what? Maybe Marx was right. You know, religion is the opiate of the people, right? It's a thing of control. And to your point about people being astonished that I'm an atheist, try that in the Black community.
Yeah.
80% of Black people in America.
Yeah.
Right.
80%.
Yeah, that's
a lot.
So yeah, this was definitely on our list to talk about too, like the idea of Christianity and racism and how they have held hands for centuries. I don't know, talk about that from your perspective, because racism is one of those things that now is like, it's a buzzword. And I guess it has been for a while. As soon as you bring up race, people say, oh, why is it always got to be about race? Well, newsflash, fucker, it's about race. Like, I mean, that's how it is. Like, yeah, I mean, and I think people like, they want to dismiss the topic because if you're white, well, it hasn't been about race. And the only thing you've heard about race is, well, it doesn't affect you because you're white, you know, which is the very definition of white privilege, you know, and no one seems to get that. So like, as a Black man, as an atheist, as a humanist, like, how do you view that unholy marriage of Christianity and Black culture? Like, and how do you work to change that?
Here's the thing. I get it, right? A lot of Black folks have this perspective of, you know, how Christianity's always existed in Africa. And they love to go back to, you know, the whole aspect of the Coptic church, right? You know, the oldest Christian churches in Ethiopia, right? That's the true Christianity. And I'm like, yeah, but do you know that was like between like the 1st and 2nd century? Do you know what the Ethiopians believed in before that? And do you know who introduced Christianity into Ethiopia? However, it always sounds very interesting because 99% of Black people in America come from West Africa. And West Africa was not introduced to Christianity until the 15th century when the Portuguese came and they wanted to do business with King Nzinga. King Nzinga wanted access to the European trade. And so then he made, you know, in West Central Africa, he made that the official religion. But there was kind of like an internal war when he did it because, you know, Africans have their own ATRs. They have their own African traditional religions, right? Yoruba has been around between 8,000 to 9,000 years. Okay. That's longer than Christianity and Judaism combined. Then you had the Akan philosophy, right? And so we weren't even exposed to Christianity until the 15th century. And then, you know, you had the Ma'afa, right? Swahili for the Black Holocaust, the transatlantic slave trade. And the Episcopalian Church made an admission a few years ago. A lot of people thought that it wasn't really until about the mid-18th century that there was like this mass baptism in America, that somehow the former colonial masters did not want to make the slaves Christian because we're, you know, we're all created in the image of God. But that wasn't true. They were forcibly baptized before they even left the shores of West Africa. And they came out with this huge apology of their hand in the slave trade. And so I get it. I get the history. I get, you know, the first few generations that knew their African traditional religions. However, each generation, it gets watered down because of violence, because of the exposure to violence. And what's interesting, and Dr. Joy DeGroy, I think she's a professor at Portland University, she coined post-traumatic slave syndrome. basically she's saying that the fears that we've had centuries ago are epigenetic. They manifest in our DNA expression. So a person can feel anxiety, can feel fear of not ever stepping foot on a plantation because it's epigenetic at this point. Right? The American Pediatric Association labeled racism as an STD, a socially transmitted disease, that children literally are born with anxiety based on the trauma epigenetically through generations. And so I get it why so many Black folks in America are Christian. There's so many doors that used to be opened up if you were a Christian. And I'm going to be honest. Hey, if I'm Black and I believe in God, I believe in this white Jesus, that makes me white adjacent. So that makes more opportunities for me.
Right.
Right. It's a survival tactic. Even today, I have a friend who's a pastor that came out and said, listen, I'm queer affirming. In December, he got phone calls saying usually his itinerary used to be filled a year ahead of time. He doesn't have one speaking engagement. They said, yeah, we're going to go in a different direction next year. Man. And that's his job.
Yeah.
You see, so I understand it, but then again, it can't continue to be a crutch. It's 2023. You can't lean on 400 years ago. I understand it. But there comes a moment in time where you have to wake up and not be afraid anymore.
Which is easier said than done.
It is, but I'm glad that more, especially Black women, are starting to leave the church en masse. And they're adopting, hey, I'm an atheist, but I appreciate, especially African cosmologies, I appreciate the philosophy. I don't have to believe in their gods, right? So my thing is, hey, if you want to believe in something, at least believe in something that's a part of your ancestral lineage. If you want to believe in anything. I'm glad that that's happening because of the internet. You know, it's kind of like very Nietzschean of me, you know, God is dead, right? The internet.
The internet killed God.
Basically killed God off, you know.
He's not all powerful.
Yeah, you know, I'm glad for that. But my opinion is it's going to take about, each generation is approximately 30 years? I think it's going to take about 5 more generations to kind of really make a dent in the African-American psyche as it relates to religion.
Yeah.
Another 5 generations.
I remember somebody that you interviewed saying that they got it worse from Black Christians after they left than white Christians. Like, is the Black community harder on when their own kind of leave?
Absolutely. And I'm gonna be totally honest with you. It's better if you're Black to come out as gay than to say you don't believe in God.
Wow.
It's easier to come out as gay than to say you don't believe in God.
Wow.
Crazy. So you mentioned that generational trauma and the epigenetic thing. That kind of lines up. I'm reading like a book called, I don't know if you ever read this book. It's called Black Reconstruction in America by Henry Gates. It's basically like a history book.
I have that book and I have not yet read it.
Well,
I have to.
I just read this last night where Henry Gates is talking about Du Bois and where he got the philosophy of double consciousness from. Are you familiar with that at all?
I'm not.
So double consciousness was based on like a French psychologist when he's talking about people having like almost like 2 identities. And so Du Bois took this and applied it to the Black community, saying like you had a double consciousness as an American and as he uses the term Negro because this is, during deconstruction, and you never actually developed a sense of self because you were trying to fit in America, but also maintain your Blackness. And that's the same exact thing you're talking about. And like, and then you add in the Christian piece, they preach slavery from the pulpit and use the Bible to justify it. And some of them still do, like not in so many words. They wouldn't say I'm pro-slavery, but they're using the Bible to justify bigotry and racism and sexism and misogyny. Yeah.
Does that not bother Black Christians that the Bible itself condones slavery, or do they not realize, or do they kind of rationalize it like, oh, that it's not that kind of slavery?
You want to hear something that's going to, it's never sit well with me, and it's not going to sit well with you guys either. A lot of Black people, they know that slavery is in the Bible, and they basically attribute the transatlantic slave trade as punishment for Africans turning away from the true God. They believe that we Africans worship demons and all of this stuff. And so God sent his wrath and enslaved us as punishment. And so they believe that slavery, a lot of Black people think that slavery was the best thing that ever happened to us.
That is so backwards.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean,
that is some mental gymnastics.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, the whole thing of recently with Beyonce, Black Parade song, and she was talking about Yoruba and the Orishas, which are like beautiful gods and goddesses of like nature, and they're telling her, oh my goodness, she's summoning demons.
Mm-hmm.
Boycott her music. She's not a woman of God. And it's like, how deep is that indoctrination where you will adopt something foreign to you and discard something that is of your ancestral lineage? How clinical is that? That exudes such self-hatred, self-loathing. And like what you were saying, it's the identity. We don't even know who we are. Black people don't even know who we are because we had to assimilate. It would have been better off in slavery if we were put in another country and just left to fend for ourselves. At least then we could have created a national identity for ourselves.
Right.
Instead of having to forcibly be assimilated and take the belief of a foreign ideology that, again, only came to West Africa in the 15th century.
Yeah.
And on top of that, having slavery, like physical labor forced on you, and also sex forced on you.
Right. With the masters.
Slave owners. And
well, and then all the things that you would have to do as a slave just to survive that were basically betraying who you were as a Black person to just avoid being killed by your master because you were just viewed as property. So they're every day pushing their own self down just for the possibility of living a life that is just pure shit. There's no like softening the slavery life. And like a lot of people will try to say, oh, well, slavery in America wasn't really all that bad. It was like indentured servitude and yada yada. And they try to say chattel slavery and but the real stories, if you read any of the real stories, like it was not, they weren't part of the family. I mean, you've seen even some of the founding fathers wrote in some of these documents saying, oh, my slaves are part of the family. Like, no, they weren't. Like, you treated them like property and then you raped the women, you did all kinds of stuff to oppress them. And then when they got their freedom, you still didn't give it to them. They still don't have it. Like 400 years later, they still don't have it. You still don't have it. And then they wonder why the shit goes down when George Floyd gets murdered or when George Floyd seems like ancient history now because this shit happens every fucking day. I mean, I'm pissed off about it and I'm freaking white. Like, I mean, I could get heated about this shit and people are like, what do you care? You're a white guy, but that part, I mean, this kind of goes back to the humanism thing. Like, if that kind of shit doesn't make you mad and your religion props up the idea of murdering people, the police murdering people or whatever, that's not the higher moral ground.
I have a theory about this that you probably don't know this, but I was raised Christian, but I was like never really bought into it. But my observations were that people who believed in God believed that God had a plan and that I am this person because I'm a white female because that's how he planned it to be. And you're a Black male because that's who he planned you to be. And he planned all of us to have this life. And if God wanted George Floyd to, be killed in that manner, then that was his plan. And there's nothing I can do about it. But when you're a humanist, you have more empathy because you realize that you could have been born anyone. I could have been born in the slums. I could have been born in India. I could have been born anywhere, like literally at any time, anywhere. And with that perspective, we should care about the well-being of every single person as if they were ourselves.
No, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it gives you a sense of accountability when you're a humanist, right? Like you want to do something because nothing is going to get done unless we collectively come together and do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know,
you
it's
can't
not
sit around and wait.
changed through prayers. No, we can't sit around and wait, you know, and that's what's so frustrating with, you know, with the Black church, because, I have my own theories even about, Dr. King. The Black church was very, very powerful. When you're talking about like in the 50s, 60s, 70s, if you wanted to get something politically done, you had to go through the Black church to do it. But reading King's thesis online, Dr. King didn't believe a whole lot of what Black Christians believe today. Martin Luther King did not believe in the divinity of Jesus. He did not believe in the resurrection. He did not believe in the virgin birth. He did not believe in the Immaculate Conception. I have a theory that Dr. King might have been a humanist.
Yeah.
However, he knew that being a humanist, he couldn't get anything done.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he had to use the Black church in order to catapult his promotions of civil rights.
That's that double consciousness again.
See, yeah.
Different double consciousness, but like he had to use, I mean, it was survival in that case too for the cause.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, and it's, and I'm so frustrated with the Black church because, again, it's like, God has a plan. I know we're getting killed, but God has a plan. And it's infuriating to me, and white Christian nationalism, I mean, okay, but let's talk about white Christian nationalist ideologies in Black churches. Right? Like the whole saying goes, not all skin folk are kinfolk. Just because you look like me doesn't mean you have my best interests.
Right.
And that's why, and that's what the beautiful thing about humanists, because I'm for ideals. I don't care if you're black, white, green, orange, or purple. If we share the same ideals, we can move Earth.
Yeah, it's similar to what we had Bart Campolo on a few episodes ago. And he was talking about when he was the humanist chaplain at USC, when people approached him about being in the group, they asked, well, what do I have to believe? And he said, I don't give a shit what you believe. It's what you're going to do. Like, do we have the same goals? Are we the same type of person? Are we trying to accomplish the same thing? And so that's kind of where I look at humanism as like, it's really the ultimate expression of goodness. Like, if you really think about it, being concerned about your fellow man, that's what you should be doing anyway. Like, I mean, evolutionarily, that's what you should be doing. And if you are a supposed Christian, you shouldn't need the mandate of a deity to tell you to love your neighbor as yourself, which is obviously a philosophy that has been in every culture since the beginning of people groups. That culture has been there. Like, let me treat the person next to me the same way I want to be treated. It's kind of common sense. That's not biblical. And if you're not living that way, what are you doing? Like, what good are you bringing? What are you bringing to the table? You're not bringing nothing,
No, they're being opportunists. I think it's something like you said earlier. If the only reason why you're being good is because you're kind of seeking, a reward in the great by and by, I mean, that kind of makes you a shitty person.
Yeah, and if the afterlife is the motivation, you can see how that translates in how Christians view the world today. Well, we don't care about climate change because we're going to heaven, new earth. Who gives a shit about climate change? Well, we don't care about race relations because, we're all going to be the same when we get to heaven, and it's going to be one big Asbury revival for all of eternity.
With the measles and everything?
Correct. With the measles, probably. There's no vaccines in heaven either, so I don't know. But you see how that plays out in your everyday life when the afterlife is your motivation for everything. And that's the kind of thing you don't see when you're in, because it feels so noble to think about heaven and, the afterlife being the ultimate goal. But you don't realize the 70, 80, 90 years around the earth, you're not accomplishing anything for what's here.
Right. I mean, that's the old adage of the slave narrative, right? You know what? Don't worry about what happens to you. Don't worry if I auctioned off your children. Hey, this life is going to be over soon.
Right.
You're going to have heaven always, right? And it kind of leads to the whole Napoleon quotation, right? Religion keeps the poor from murdering the rich.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a means of control.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's a hell of a coping mechanism too. Because if you're getting beat every day or, whatever abuse you're enduring, and you're just always looking to the future of heaven, well, you can suspend all of that mentally and just say, well, none of that matters because I'm going to have a glorified body and this isn't going to matter.
Right. It's the whole notion of some people can be so spiritual that they're no earthly good to anyone around them.
So we've asked this question to a few people that we've interviewed, and I'm curious what your perspective is. So you're a humanist, and you're not really in the business of deconverting people, I'm assuming.
Right.
But do you think there's any value to religion at all in people's lives, or is everybody better off deconverted? I mean, this person's happy as a Christian and, whatever. They're not causing any harm, but that they have children and then they indoctrinate those children. And to me and Phil, anyway, indoctrination of children is child abuse. That's how we see it. How do you see that? Like, how do you balance those two things of just let them be happy, let them be, everybody is entitled to their own beliefs and, versus the harm that it actually does people and society and their children?
I think the world would be much better without religion at all. And I agree with you. I look at it as child abuse. And it's just not about religion, right? I'm not here to audit or police people's beliefs. Hey, people can believe what they want to believe. However, it's more of a psychological component for me. Growing up, when I hear someone that has put, let's say, hours, hundreds, thousands of hours to, get their doctorate, get their PhD, and for someone to say, man, you know what? Look at what God did in your life. God did that for you, right? Whoa! So you're going to just sidestep what I did, right? An athlete that's put thousands of hours in blood, sweat, and tears to accomplish a goal, and you tell them, you know where you got your athletic ability from, right? That was nothing but God, right?
Right.
What does that do to the self-esteem of a person? That lets you know that you are nothing. If you don't worship something, then you are nothing.
Yeah.
What does that do to the psyche of a person? I'm livid by that. Mm-hmm. And it's all encapsulated in language, right? I made a video about this, about all of this, this whole slow deconstruction. And then people saying, well, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual.
What does that mean?
What does spiritual really mean, right? I mean, that doesn't the word spirit comes from the Latin word spiritus, which means breath? I mean, what are you saying? Are you breathy? Are you airy? What does spirituality mean? Or, hey, I don't believe in God anymore. I believe in the universe. I asked the universe for it. Well, isn't that a location? Like you might as well say, I'm gonna ask Maryland for it. Right. I'm gonna ask Virginia for it, right?
Let me ask Alpha Centauri for it. Right.
And it's not that I'm poking fun or I'm being like this, belief police, but language, it influences our behaviors and our thought processes. Religious language says to you, you're not shit without God, right? There's something in us, right, that feels that we can't look. What was it? Douglas Adams, right? The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, when he said, isn't it enough to look at a garden as beautiful without having to believe that there are fairies at the bottom of it too?
Right.
Why can't I look at a bird and say, oh my God, look how magnificent the bird. Why do I have to say, oh my goodness, look at the divine essence that is exuberating through why do I have to add this? Why can't I look at nature for what she is?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because there's something in us that indoctrination has done that makes us believe to be human is not enough. I have to layer myself with metaphysical language, with spiritual connotations. I have to layer myself because deep down inside, I don't feel adequate. You may not think that I'm interesting enough. You may not think that I'm beautiful or handsome enough or creative enough or edgy enough. So I have to create this level of mysticism around me so that you can think that I'm interesting because I feel inadequate.
Right.
And so I think so many people need to go in the bathroom, strip naked, whether it's literally, figuratively, and prostrate themselves in the mirror and say, how do I feel? Why do I believe this? and answer yourself raw and truthful, even if you don't like the answer that you provided yourself, because that's what the church has done. It has made us believe that we are nothing without believing in something.
I have chills.
I know. Damn.
He's like a preacher.
I mean,
but you're like the anti-preacher.
Yeah. The whole idea of like, I used to struggle, like post deconstruction, mine was very slow, and I did the progressive Christianity thing for a while. And then when I was coming out of that, I was like doing the same thing, like, oh, the universe, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. And now I come to the point where like, there's an immense freedom in not having to assign any other value to the experiences of life. Like you were saying, you look at nature, you see a flower, you see whatever, you're like in awe of it for what it is. Oh, nothing pisses me off more when someone takes a picture of a fucking flower and they have to say, I can't believe the design that went to this from the creator, blah, blah, blah.
Or it's so beautiful, it must be from God.
Right. It's like, no, that is bullshit.
Take a picture of something ugly in nature and then ask if that's from God. Like,
yeah, it drives me freaking nuts.
It really does. I mean, even when I walk, I'm cognizant of ants.
Mm-hmm.
I'm astonished that ants can lift between 50 to 100 times their body weight.
Right.
And just to be in awe, like I'm careful of, let me not step on these ants. Why assign any divinity at all to anything? But it comes from the fact that we've been groomed to think we're not shit if we don't worship a deity. That's what it boils down to. To answer the question about, do I think, the world would be better without religion? Absolutely. And I'm going to be honest with you, there's this thing going around, and I'm not going to, and I want you guys to help me with this too, right? There's this thing going around that Christians are trying to adopt the humanist label, Christian humanism. Mm-hmm. And they know that the Christian Titanic is sinking.
Mm. Isn't that what he gets us is doing?
Yeah. Like, hey, we love people too. Well, if you love people, then keep the Christian label. Yeah. Why are you adopting humanism?
Right. You shouldn't have to rebrand.
See, there you go. And I'm not going to allow them to bastardize humanism. I'm not going to allow them to do it. You're a Christian. I want you to stay on that ship. And like a good captain, I want you to go down with
the ship.
I want you to go down with it because at least I can respect you. I can respect it.
Yeah, you're not trying to bail out at the last minute, like in Titanic, where he's like taking the lifeboat from the women and children, and then sitting in there like this, going,
heck of an analogy. Yeah,
because that's what they're doing. Like the whole "He Gets Us" campaign, they're trying to rebrand Jesus. But what's funny is the organization that's putting that on don't believe in the Jesus that they're presenting in the video. Like that's not the Jesus that they believe in. So they're trying to like hoodwink people to get them in the door. And then they're going to be like, oh, by the way, we didn't really mean that it's okay if you're gay or that you're Muslim or that you're the other side of the political aisle or whatever. That shit's not okay. We just said that to get you in the door. But hey, we got heaven.
Absolutely. And don't, that's another rabbit hole, because again, it's this, I think Sam Harris even spoke about this, how the doors of the church have never opened from the inside out. It's always been secularism. It's always been humanism that has always blasted the doors of the church from the outside in, right? Christianity has never policed itself, right? It's because of the pressure, the constant pressure of secularism,
right?
That the church has even progressed to the point it has now.
Yeah.
So to go down a rabbit hole of saying, okay, now you want to talk about Jesus. Well, you really think he existed the way you thought he existed? If at all? Oh, now that's Pandora's box.
Yeah.
It's just I like to see it's interesting to see the progression of how Christianity has attempted to remain relevant. Back in the day, people were very prideful of belonging to the denomination that they were in. Oh, I'm a Methodist. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm an Episcopal. I'm a Pentecostal. Then it went from there to, I'm not a denomination. I just have a personal relationship with Jesus. Yeah. Then it went from that to I'm spiritual. Mm-hmm. Now it goes to I follow the teachings of Jesus.
Right.
It's like a virus. Any virus worth its grain of salt will morph itself and hide in healthy, arteries, right? Healthy cells, right? To survive. Mm-hmm. And Christianity is a very formidable opponent. It really is.
It's like adapting.
Yeah, to use that virus analogy, it's getting to the point now where you have to do this he gets us thing because the virus is starting to consume the host.
Yes.
It's killing itself off. And so they're like, oh, shit.
Oh, interesting.
We took this too far. So now we got to backpedal. And it drives me nuts. Like, I have a lot of Christian friends still. And thankfully, like, it's been really amazing to see a lot of people that I went to Christian high school and college with are deconstructing and deconverting. But a lot of the quote unquote tolerable Christians that I have in my life, they always want to come back to well, let's focus on Jesus. Okay. And like you said, okay, well, do you really want to go down that rabbit hole? Because I don't think you're prepared for what you're going to find when you go looking for the historical Jesus. Because if you really want to look for the historical Jesus, he's not who you believe in.
No.
That is all legend and myth that was created hundreds of years after he walked the planet. If he even walked the planet in the form that you say he did.
Yeah.
That's a box. Like you said, people, they're like, oh shit, put that back in the box. Like,
put that back in the box.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so deep now. I asked someone this. I said to them, and it was a pastor, I said to them, if you ever found out that the historical Jesus that you believed existed didn't exist, would you still remain a Christian? And do you know, he said,
absolutely.
I would still believe a Christian. That's how deep and big this virus has become. Now, Jesus could be, tomorrow it could come out in breaking news, Jesus never existed. That's okay. I believe in the concepts of Christianity. I believe, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this in interviews and on some like forums. They just dismiss the stuff that is inconvenient and say, oh, well, it doesn't matter if that's not true in the Bible. I still believe in like you said, the values or whatever.
You don't need Jesus to have those values.
Yeah, you don't need Jesus to have those values. And then it's really interesting to see people then double down. But look at what the Bible said. Even Paul said, if the resurrection isn't true, then we're of all people most miserable. So if you could demonstrably prove that the resurrection didn't happen, your own apostle Paul said, well, you're a miserable fuck. But these guys are still going to hang on. They're going to hang on to it even if it's not true. And they always say, well, I'm out seeking truth. No, you're not. You're seeking confirmation of your own bias. Like, that's it. That's all you want. Like,
I'm just curious, that pastor friend you mentioned, is that the one that you interviewed and it got cut off early? I think I was on TikTok.
Oh, no, it was a different one.
It was a different one.
Yeah, it was a different one. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I'm still not able to recover that video.
Yeah.
And
I wish I could see that.
And the people that reported him. So it's not like, see, again, we can't, in this instance, I can't talk about, oh, white folks didn't want to see two Black men come together and with some, commonality. Nope. It was his own Black church folks that reported that video. Yes.
Right. Yeah. We should have provided context, but he was doing like an interview with a Black pastor friend on TikTok, and it got cut off halfway through because people were reporting it. It turns out that it was his own pastor friend's congregation.
It was like a live stream?
It was a live stream on TikTok, and it got canceled, and and it was so good. Oh, it was getting good, and I can't even retrieve it.
I was really looking forward to hearing it.
But Christians are the ones that are always upset about cancel culture. As soon as someone says that they have to live like a human being, they're like, oh, we're being canceled. But they're always the ones that are canceling everything.
Absolutely.
You can't have Rihanna in the freaking Super Bowl. We got to cancel her. Beyonce, cancel. It's such a double standard. Like,
it is. And Phil, the thing about it, I think the real coveted reason why people really don't want to let go of this Christianity, because it will expose their accountability. So, for instance, someone asked me years ago, Robert, will the world be a better place? So I'm going to kind of revisit. Will it be a better place if religion didn't exist? My reply was, better? That's subjective. I would say the world would be a much more transparent place without religion, because now you can't hide behind the veil of religion and utilize your bigotry to justify.
Right.
If you're racist, If you're homophobic, you can't lean on the Bible anymore. You can't lean on the church. You just have to say, hey, I just don't like gay people.
Right.
And guess what? That's too transparent. Like nobody, right. But as long as you can kind of lean on, hey, you know what? That's what the church said, and that's how I was raised up, and that's what God says in his word, and I'm just abiding by it. Mm-hmm. See, that's the real reason. Yeah. It's the transparency.
Kind of why the Bible is so dangerous. Like whatever view you have, you can find something in the Bible to justify it and say, oh, it's not from me, it's from God. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like when we're talking about the whole Abraham thing, right? I mean, here, and I mean, and I love the writings of Soren Kierkegaard, right? But that whole thing, that Kierkegaard, that teleological suspension of the ethical, Kierkegaard's philosophical wrestling that, God suspended his own ethics to allow Abraham, like the mental gymnastics that you have to do to justify what God was asking this man to do. And saying that God suspended his own?
Right.
It's clinical at this point.
That's insane.
Or they just say it's because God is so much holier than we are that we can't understand what he was thinking about when he asked Abraham to do that, because that's way above our pay grade. Or, when he flooded the whole earth and killed everybody except 8 people, well, that's because of his holiness. Like, but if serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer wants to go out and kill and eat a bunch of people and say his holiness is the reason why, that shit ain't gonna fly. He's going to wind up in the chair, but God gets away with it because
might makes right.
You have a campaign going about the dangers of theocracy and how it affects different people groups, especially women. So what dangers do you see in our country of progressing towards a theocracy, which it seems like people want to create, and then what people groups are going to be more adversely affected by that than others? Like, what are your thoughts about? That's kind of a loaded question, but
no, absolutely. So I originally started the Her Story campaign, and I want to definitely pick that up this year again, because Christianity in this country there's such a patriarchal hierarchy to it. And, when you look in the Bible, I mean, women were just property. They didn't even know, women had reproductive organs. They believed that, the entirety of a human being was basically within the sperma of man. And basically women should have just been so grateful that men would, inject their semen in them to have this child. And it's going to affect women. I mean, look at the reversal of Roe v. Wade, the taking of the bodily autonomy of women. That's who it's going to affect. And they know this because women, this is how you check the barometer of a religion. You check it by the participation of women. If women were to enact an exodus en masse out of the church doors, Christian nationalism would be depleted immediately. Mm-hmm. That's how powerful women are. And so in parenting, the child usually takes up the belief of the mother, not the father.
Right.
And it makes sense because the mother is the first teacher of the child. So whatever the mother believes, the child is going to believe as well. That's why there's such an attack on women and utilizing societal religiosity to do it, because they understand the power that women have. A free thinking society begins with women.
Well, and look at how that's happening in Muslim countries in the Middle East now. Look at in Iran and Iraq. They're a theocracy. That's a literal theocracy that, of course, Christians over here would say is extreme.
Oh, but
they're trying to do the same shit here. They're just doing it with a different hat on.
Exactly. They're trying to create an Atwoodian dystopia here. It's going to be a sheer Handmaid's Tale here.
Yep.
And the thing about it, and here's where Christianity becomes so insidious psychologically, is that, we always think of sexism and misogyny coming from men, but women who are fundamentalists in their Christianity, women can be the greatest proponents of misogyny and sexism. That's why they're trying to keep the pews filled with women. I mean, women run churches.
Right.
Women are the ones that keep churches afloat. Yeah. They're the ones keeping the sinking ship afloat. And for me, women are the key. I think someone said years ago, the place for women have always been on the front lines of a revolution. And then what happens is men sit back and say, oh, okay, well, I guess it's time for us to kind of help, huh, guys? Yeah. The women are out there first, right? Women have always been revolutionary.
Yeah.
That's why I started the Her Story campaign, to just give diverse faces of different women that, you know, to kind of give voice to their perspective that, you know what, yeah, we're not down with this theocracy. We're not down with this patriarchal hierarchy that Christianity has to offer. We're done with this now.
Well, and what do you think it would take to get American women to flip?
How do we get organized?
How is this happening in other countries? And what would it take here for women to kind of grab that bull by the horns and be like, we're not taking this shit anymore? And what would that look like?
I give an example. So out here in Arizona, there's a huge Mormon population out here, especially in Gilbert, Arizona. That's where the main Mormon temple is. And you see so many women, stay-at-home moms, that are 100% dependent on their husbands. Even in the Black community, women, I don't think it really matters the ethnicity. I think to a certain level, women may feel that they still need that lifeline with the agency of men. Mm. And so what they'll do is they'll stay in situations that they might not even agree with, but out of sheer survival tactics, they'll stay. And something has to shift. It has to almost be like a second Independence Day in America, right? And it's happening, but it's not happening fast enough. And specifically for white women and just your average, you know, poor, I mean, because there's no middle class anymore. There's poor and then there's ultra wealthy. Mm-hmm. Right? The middle class is gone. So check this out. If one day white women woke up and said, wait a minute, we're the new slaves now by the patriarchal hierarchy of these Christian nationalist white men. We've traded places now with we're the slaves. That will catapult rage and immediate impact.
Yeah. It
hasn't happened yet, right? Just like with inflation, right? I can go to a store and there's a bag of chips that costs $4.90. And you already know that the bag is only a quarter of the way filled.
Right.
Almost $5. So, but because people still have the ability to kind of do what they want, doesn't affect me at that level yet. Mm-hmm. But when it does, that's when people move.
Right.
And so that's what we saw with the reversal of Roe v. Wade, or the attempt to totally ban abortion. Women came out in droves.
Right.
And that's what it's going to take. Unfortunately, education, Frederick Douglass even mentioned this, like education isn't enough, unfortunately. You can educate someone till the cows come home. You can philosophize with someone till the cows come home. But unfortunately, it's going to have to take something to knock on your front door for anyone to move.
Right. And that's how it is. Like, it seems like with anything, until the pain actually comes and affects you personally, then all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, I need to do something. I mean, it reminds me of that. I think this was in reference to the Holocaust, like when they came for this person, I didn't do anything because it was out there. When they came for my neighbor, then I was like, oh shit. But then when they came for me, it was too late. If we don't empower women and people that are on the margins, I'm not saying women are on the margins, but like you were saying, in the patriarchal system, no one would admit this, but they're viewed as below. No Christian would say, oh no, we don't view women.
Some might
as less. They're equal, blah, blah, except for they can't teach, they can't preach, except for Sunday school. They can work in the nursery and they can lead, the choir, but they can't be in the pulpit.
Absolutely. And it takes a very weak, feeble-minded man to try to keep a woman in her place. It's like, they're so weak. They're so weak. even some people that I know have said, you know what? Yeah, I can't date a woman that makes more money than me. I won't do it. Why?
Yeah.
Because she's going to think that she's in the driver's seat.
Right.
You know, I can't do it. I'm like, even if she loves you,
she's in the driver's seat anyway.
Right. So think of how jacked up that is, right?
Yeah.
That, in other words, you only want a woman that you know has to be dependent on you.
Right.
So you don't want to date a woman that doesn't need you financially, but wants you.
Right.
That's a weak man. I want a woman that wants me, that doesn't need anything from me.
Right.
That wants me. She literally just wants me for me.
Yeah, she's there by her own choice.
You got to be secure in your spot as a man to walk that path.
Yeah.
Yeah. This whole issue is one of the first things that I remember thinking about as a child, about, you know, these verses in the Bible and how women were treated at church, and we weren't allowed to be pastors, and we weren't allowed to have all these church offices. And I remember thinking as a kid, this doesn't seem right to me. I mean, I have a brother and a sister, and my parents were pretty good with us. They didn't treat us all that differently, but there were undertones of different expectations for the two of us. Just simple things like my mom would try to teach me how to cook, even though I had zero interest. And I would say like, well, why don't you teach my brother too? You know, and she'd give me this look like, don't be ridiculous.
Right.
She just scoffed at me.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember those things so clearly, thinking, this isn't right. Is this really how God intended it to be? That was one of the first cracks for me. And yeah, it's just, there is no ideology that can be true that also treats women like this, or, you know, any group of people to be beneath another group. It can't be true.
Right. My grandmother told me years ago, you know, my grandmother was a heck of a feminist. And she said, you know, it's the old adage of boys are taught morals, girls are taught manners. Cook, clean, set the table properly, right? It's all about manners.
Yeah.
You know, those are the things that a lot of men think, you know, their projection of women. It's like, you know, and I just have to say it the way I have to say it. It's like, you know, feed me, fuck me, shut up until I talk to you. That would be the heaven of a lot of men.
Yeah. Well, and I think when you think about this, you know, drive for equity and equality, it's the women that have the power, but because in our society, men have the power, it has to be us that actually empower the women. Like, we have to do it because we have the actual cultural cachet to do it. Right. We have to be the ones to stand up for women, not because they need it, but because we have the ability to support them and give them the voice. Like, because it's just like being the voice for any person that doesn't have a voice. That's your responsibility and obligation as a human being, to be a voice for the voiceless, to reach those people on the margins and bring them in from the margins so they're in the mainstream. Like, that's what we have to do as men. And truly, like, as humanists, that's what we're supposed to be doing. Yeah. Like, that's really why humanism is, like we said earlier, it's really the pinnacle of existence. Like, that's what you should be doing as a decent human being. And you don't need God to do that.
Yeah, you hit the hammer on the nail. I mean, there was a video of a police officer and a black guy who they thought had a weapon, and they all had guns, like they were about to shoot. And it was this white man that came out and said, "Do you want me to walk over there with you? Do you want me to come over there?" And he literally stood in front of all these white officers with guns drawn.
Yeah, I think I saw that video.
He knew, right, kind of like what you're saying, right? Like empowerment, because he knew, okay, you know what? I have to utilize my white male privilege because I know they're not going to shoot me.
Right.
I have to utilize my privilege in order to save this life.
Yeah.
And that right there was an act of humanism. That's humanism 10.0.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the kind of things that, like, white people need to do. And again, there's this whole thing, like, then you get like this ego thing of where a woman or maybe a black person say, well, I don't need your help. It's not because you need the help. It's because we have the ability to help, and we're doing it because we want to. You know, I saw a cop video actually of some white drunk college kid that got pulled over. And the headline of this video was "Kid Juggles to Get Out of DUI." And I'm watching the video, you know, it's on the body cam of this white kid who gets pulled over. He's talking real friendly to the officers, went into the back seat of his car with the officers there and pulled out juggling pins. And I'm like, if that would have been a black dude that went into the backseat of his car to be like, no, look, I was just coming from this. Let me show you I'm not drunk by juggling. His ass would have been dead on the pavement. But these fucking cops watched this guy juggle for 5 minutes. They're laughing and joking, blah, 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 blah. How much you want to bet that kid was drunk as a skunk?
And they knew it.
He probably juggles better when he's drunk. And I commented on this saying, oh, must be nice to be a white drunk kid, you know? And like a lot of people were like, yeah, you're damn right. But then there's a couple people go, oh, no, he was being compliant. Really? Tamir Rice was being a non-compliant? Like, come on. There's a reason that it looks like a black person is being non-compliant because they are scared to death. Yes. And with good reason. Like, you can't. I keep circling back to that because
you look really mad.
Yeah, it gets me fucking heated. Like, I mean, I don't know. But just the idea of being a decent human being, it doesn't seem like it should be that hard, you know?
It doesn't take that much brain effort to figure it out how to do it.
Right.
Just treat other people as if you were that person.
Right. It's not rocket
science. It's not that hard.
It's not hard. It's only hard when you conglomerated with religiosity and other ideologies, and the lines become very skewed.
We really appreciate you giving us so much time and, you know, just talking with us.
I enjoyed this conversation, and this is what this is all about. You know, it's all about ideals. Like, we get each other. Although our ethnicities may be different, there's only one, right? There's only one race, the human race, right? You know what I mean? There's only one. And in seeing you know, get fired up about the racial, you know, inequities, like, that's what we should see more of, you know, and I appreciate that.
Can you tell the people how they can find you, like your social media, your sites about Affinis?
Oh, absolutely. They can find me. My website is affinishumanity.org. That's AFFINIS, affinishumanity.org. And it's a cool thing. So how I just want to add this little tidbit. I came up with Affinis because I was really thinking about a name. And I always liked affinity, right? And I found that in etymology, so basically affinity stems from the Latin affinis, which means a natural attraction to a person, thing, or idea. And for me, that natural attraction is to humanity, to be human.
I love that your motto is to be human is enough. It's a perfect crystallization of like what your life should be about. It's like, just be who you are and be okay with it. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It doesn't mean you have to like fit into somebody else's mold. Just be yourself, and that's enough. Anyway, I cut off all your links. Tell everybody you got Affinis.
Oh no, that's okay. Instagram, it's Affinis Humanity. You can find me on TikTok. It's Affinis_humanity. And yeah, those are the links.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll put those all in the show notes too for the people who might be spelling challenged, you know, since they're not used to people might not be used to typing in Latin roots, so we'll try to make it easy for them so they can find you and connect with you. So, well, we really appreciate you being here. Thank you for just giving us so much time and everything that you had to share.
Thank you, Robert. This has been so great. I really enjoyed this conversation.
I enjoyed it as well. Thanks guys for reaching out to me. This was a definite pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Flawed Theology Podcast. I'm Phil.
And I'm Susie. Tune in next time where we will continue to tackle the question, if your theology were wrong, wouldn't you want to know?
Be sure to join us on our Facebook group, Dangerous Questions, and follow us at flawedtheologypodcast.com. Subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Rate and review the podcast on Google, Spotify, Apple. Those reviews are really cool, and we like to hear from them. So until next time, keep asking the dangerous questions.
See you next time.
I don't get, some people that are like, quote unquote, atheist celebrities and whole secular communities. And it's kind of like, that's just not me. This whole, ego trip. And it's like, man, we're here to share knowledge. We're here to share our stories. And that's what I'm about. It's not about how many followers someone has, that doesn't matter. It's about a person's genuinity and what they're trying to do.